into the soil. If you're growing things like any of the natives, any of the wildflowers, things like that, again, a granite mulch or a rock mulch can make a big difference. I know down at the Botanical Garden a few years ago they had big beds of a plant called liatris, what they call a gay feather. You see it along the roads in the fall that has those big spikes of the purple flowers. Well, they had a big bed of it down there, but it never grew, it never expanded. It stayed just the same size it was, and they had to replant some new plants into it periodically. They went and used a granite mulch around those plants, and all of a sudden they had seedlings coming up everywhere. You know, they'd have literally hundreds of new plants sprouting in there. So in your areas where you have, drought-loving plants and you don't want to use the good living mulches, one of the rock mulches can make a big difference, both in keeping the soil cooler and in helping, with things like that, getting things to reseed. The other thing that we can pretty much say is an across-the-board rule for gardening in the sun is that the more light a plant gets, the more fertilizer it uses and needs. In a real shady area, you can use probably half as much fertilizer as you do out in the sun. In the sun, you need to fertilize more often if you're going to keep things healthy and growing well. And I'm going to tell you that if you really want to keep full sun grass, full sun ground covers, or full sun perennials and annuals looking really good, probably fertilize every 6 weeks in the summer months. You don't need to do it as often in the spring and fall, but in the heat, the plants simply need more nutrition, and it can make all the difference in how things look. The other thing is when you are planting in a full sun area, and this is regardless of whether it's shrubs, and gosh, virtually every shrub will grow in the sun. We'll talk about those in a minute. But whether it's sun, whether it's tropicals, whether it's annuals, whether it's ground covers, work plenty of organic material into the soil, usually in the form of good compost. People look at a lot of plants around here and they say, well, I know this grows in the shade, will it grow in the sun? And frequently the answer is it will if the soil is real good. Now things like liriope, or liriope if you prefer, monkey grass, things like that, if you just go out and dig a hole and stick them in a sunny spot in relatively lousy soil, they're going to look yellowed, they're going to have burned leaf tips, and they're not going to look real good. If you improve the soil, get it rich in organic material, you plant them out there and they'll be twice as pretty in the sun as they will in the shade. So any plant in the sun really needs a little bit better soil than the same plant would in a somewhat shadier area in order to grow and thrive. I think probably the last thing I would say about, general planting in real sunny areas is just common sense. If you're planting in the hot part of the year, you're going to have to water a little bit more frequently, and be sure that you don't allow things to dry out. The main place that water goes when you water a plant, especially a plant in the sun, you're not losing most of the moisture through evaporation. You're losing the moisture through transpiration. The water is actually being taken up by the roots of the plant and lost out through the leaves. So in a hot, sunny area, the root ball of the plant is going to dry out a whole lot faster than the surrounding soil. And you're going to go out there and you're going to feel the soil, and you're going to judge when you need to water by feeling the soil. Well, you plant a bougainvillea out there and it's got nice thorns, so you're not going to get too close to it. You're going to move, 6 inches outside the root ball. That soil may be quite moist out there, but over under the plant where the root ball actually is, that's going to dry a whole lot faster. So be sure when you first plant things in a sunny area that you do check the soil right at the base of the plant to determine when it needs to be watered. That's not to say you can't plant in the middle of the summer. You can plant containerized plants 365 days a year here, and a lot of times the summertime, I know in my yard not a whole lot gets done in the spring because I'm here 12 hours a day or longer, so a lot of my planting gets done in the hot summer months, and there's no problem with that as long as you can water and water properly. So in general, we want to improve the soil a great deal. We want to plant plants and mulch them heavily after we've planted them, and we want to be sure that we water thoroughly enough to really soak the soil deeply, because we want our plants to put their root systems down much deeper into the soil, especially in a sunny area, because it's going to make them long-term much more drought tolerant. And those are just a few general principles. Now, as far as problems that you may have in the sun, in my mind, there's no question that spider mites are always worst in a sunnier area, and some plants that don't normally seem to get a lot of spider mites, if they're planted in a little bit lower light, a little bit more moderate area, if you put them out in full sun, especially let them get a little too dry, you will definitely have spider mite problems on them. So keep some seaweed around and use it. Liquid seaweed totally stops spider mites. And the kind of things that you're going to look for spider mites on, with shrubs you can even have spider mites on boxwood. You can have spider mites, I've seen spider mite on, oh golly, even pittosporum, which you wouldn't normally expect. But when they're first set out and they're a little sensitive, shrubs like that, annual plants, of course, marigolds are known for their spider mite susceptibility. Copper plants can be very prone to spider mites. With perennials, any of the thinner leaved plants can be prone to spider mites. Things like the standing cypress, some of the thinner leaf salvias may get spider mites, and especially when you first put them out. Again, it's just real important to be hitting them with that liquid seaweed every week or two. Yes, ma'am?
What do the spider mites look like? Do they have little webs?
The spider mites create little webs. They're not spiders at all, and a lot of people shorten the term red spider mite just to red spider, and then I have people call and tell me they've seen these little red spiders running around on their plants. Those are the good guys. The spider mites are tiny. They're usually orangish in color. The initial sign that you will see on the back of a leaf will look like little tiny grains of beach sand. If you turn a leaf over, you see what look like little tiny dots of sand here and there. You may have spider mites.
Well, I had something on my Ixora, like little tiny web.
When the spider mites get a little severe, then you'll actually see the webbing form usually right where the petiole, where the stem on the leaf meets the stem of the plant. That's where you'll see the webbing start to develop. It would be unusual to have spider mites on Ixora, but it is certainly possible. The other way that you can check for spider mites is to take a sheet of white paper, go hold it underneath a leaf of the affected plant, and just, whap it real hard 2 or 3 times like that, and then go back and look at the paper. You'll actually see the little spider mites walking around on the paper. They're tiny. You probably put 50 of them on the head of a pin, but it's amazing when you get a lot of these things how much damage they can do to your plants. So, yeah, that's... The spider mite webbing is extremely dense, and you'll actually see the little spider mites suspended in it. At that point, you've got a pretty severe problem. So in that case, hit them real heavily with liquid seaweed real often. But you can't get rid of spider mites, but just be aware that they're out there. Be aware that the plants are more susceptible to them in bright, sunny areas, and know that the liquid seaweed will stop them 100%. Come on in. Okay, so what are you going to plant out in the sun? If you're looking at grasses, undoubtedly the Bermuda grass is probably your toughest and hardiest of the lawn type grasses to put out in the sun, and it doesn't mind. The hotter and brighter it is, the better Bermuda grass likes it. Zoysia will take hot sun very well. It does take a little longer to recover from foot traffic damage to it, but zoysia is perfectly happy in full hot sun. St. Augustine is not, well, St. Augustine is happy in the sun, but if you're going to plant St. Augustine in the sun, I think your best variety by far to plant is the one they call Floratam. Floratam is a grass that was developed jointly by University of Florida and Texas A&M. Obviously, that's where the name Floratam comes from. And it is a little bit more drought tolerant than most other St. Augustines. All St. Augustines will take the sun without any problem. But if you let St. Augustine get too dry, it dies. So if you're going to plant St. Augustine in the sun, again, Floratam probably would be my choice for planting any kind of grass. The other thing that I would tell you a little bit about planting in the sun. Sun, of course, is stressful on plants. Plants have something that we call a compensation point, and that is how much energy it takes a plant merely to stay alive. And when you stress a plant with bright sun and high temperatures, it takes a lot of energy just for that plant to survive, just like, you know, you and I are more stressed if we're out hiking in Big Bend on a midsummer day. Nobody in their right mind does that. I did it when I was in college, but it's obviously much more stressful than, you know, a more mild day. So the compensation point is